introduction that we went through. Okay, today is the fourth day of Adar, the 4th of March.
The introduction.
So what we saw is that he wants to explain to us the whole situation of Am Yisrael in Mitzrayim. So how did we end up there? Why were we there? And we said that he sends us to Pri Etz Chaim, Zeir Anpin, it's called, where he talks about Pesach. And there he explains the whole geschäft, like what happened and everything. But we're going to skip over it for now because our main topic in chapter 1 is going to be, and it's a long chapter, it starts on 152 and ends at the bottom of 154. So this chapter is about igulim ve'yosher. It's about circles and lines, or curves and straight edges. If you want to be more mathematical about it.
We are in our subject called linear programming and non-linear programming.
Okay. That's another way of putting it.
It's very important distinction.
So we'll see if it fits the bill. You'll tell us later. And he wants to explain to us the whole idea of a klipa. What's a klipa in the first place? What's a husk? What does it even mean? And why does the Arizal say in a number of places, Shema'amad, I'm reading the last sentence of the introduction before chapter 1. Shema'amad klipot ben hamakifim lapnimim. That the klipas always stand, this is a general rule, wherever they are, in whatever world they are, in whatever mode of consciousness they're in, they stand between the makif, the surrounding light, and the pnimi, and the integrated inner light, interior light. And they're always achoreim el makif. Their backside is to the surrounding light, and their front side upnehem el pnimi. And their front side is to the pnimi. So, in order to understand this, he says, "Ve'rotze lomar makif upnimi igulim ve'yosher." And when the Rizal says makif upnimi, you have to understand that whenever he says surrounding light and inner light, he's really going back to a much earlier definition that he gave, which is called igulim ve'yosher. Again, circles and lines. And what is this earlier definition? So this earlier definition is one of the bases of the entire concept of the Arizal's Kabbalah. And here you see that he's a lamdan. He's like a scholar, like anyone else. So if you open up the Etz Chaim, and here we thankfully finally have the Etz Chaim itself. The Etz Chaim, I told you a number of times, wasn't published until 10 years ago. It was never published. The thing we have that's called Etz Chaim is from
10 years ago. So?
10 years ago. This is from Tafshin Ein Zayin. This volume from 8 years ago. And this is Shar Akdamot. This is the original, what the Rav Chaim Vital wrote. Why it wasn't published, the whole story is, I don't want to get into it again. But what we have, what? The guy who publishes everything, Yaakov Moshe Hillel. He's also English. Yeah, a lot of the Kabbalah in this generation came from Englishmen. It's very interesting. It had to, in a certain sense, because they had this consciousness of everything goes to England, and then we research it, we figure it out. Yeah, everything. That's how it worked. So the Jews in England, they had this. So he's been collecting manuscripts since I don't know when. He's almost 90 now, and Baruch Hashem, he's well still, and he has the biggest collection of manuscripts in the world, probably bigger than the Baudelaire Library now. Certainly more important today. And they were able to finally get their hands on the manuscripts, and it was no mean task. Anyway. This was never published, it was just published. Now it doesn't matter because when you read from the Etz Chaim itself, it's not like there's such a big difference. But there are some differences. But now that you have the original Etz Chaim, why not? It's just as good as the Etz Chaim that we have. The Etz Chaim that we have is really something called Nof Etz Chaim, or Derech Etz Chaim, I don't remember, from Meir Paprish. He was also English. He was also in England for a while. In any case. So he starts on Af Gimel. The beginning of Shar Akdamot is different. It's not divided into chapters the way it is later on. You see that it was a different cheshbon. And this was probably one of the earliest things that the Arizal taught. And he said, Rav Chaim Vital writes, "Neverata chakira gdola u'machloket atzum nechleku bo kol hamekubalim." He says there's a whole debate between all the Kabbalists on this topic. כי יש מי שכתב ש10 ספירות הן כסדרן, 10 מדרגות זו למעלה מזו. There are those who wrote that the 10 ספירות, you have to align them along one line, one above the other. And that's what they look like. That's their order.
What's supposed to be in Ak? Is that...
So we'll see in a second. So there's all kinds of answers that were given. Let's hear his answer. ויש מי שכתב כי סדר עמידתן הוא בדרך 3 קווים, ימין ושמאל ואמצע. But there are those who wrote, what do you mean? We know that the sefirot are aligned along 3 axes. That, we all know, we say that every Shabbos evening, right? חד אריך, חד ציר, חד בינוני. That we read in the Paschal Lamb, in the introduction to Tikkun Zohar, that they're along 3 axes. כי יש 3 ספירות, חוכמה, חסד, נצח, זו על גבי זו בקו ימין. So we have wisdom, and loving kindness and victory along the right column, and then Bina, Gvura, and Hod on the left column, and Keter, Tiferet, Yesod, Malchut along the middle column. והם כדמיון סגולתא וסגול כזה. ורבים יחכמו ויאמרו כי 10 ספירות הם כדמיון 10 גלגלים עגולים, נתונים זה לפנים מזה וזה בתוך זה, וגלגל הכתר מקיף את כולם, וגלגל המלכות פנימי מכולם, ומוקף מכולם. Anyway, there's been all kinds of attempts to explain this. So it says, this is how you learn Torah. So it says, I have, and then he goes into a list of the different sources in the Zohar, where one it seems to be saying like this, and one it seems to be saying like this. So this is like the Rashi Rabbeinu Tam Machlokas, right? So how do you order the parshas and the tefillin and the head tefillin? So they say that when they found ancient tefillin, they found that there are some like this and some like that. So you just push the dispute back. So in the time of the Bar Kochva rebellion, which is when these ancient tefillin are from 2,000 years ago, there were already debates about how to order them. So this is an old debate. It's in the Zohar also. It says when you have a debate like that, what's the answer? The answer is they're both true. Each one is representing something different. And so there's not one way, there's more than one way, as they say, to do something to a cat, right? So it's also in the sefirot. It's not necessarily this way or that way. Both of these are true. Okay, so these are called the gulim v'yoshel. That's the Arizal's solution to this problem. Here you see how he's a scholar, like everyone else. You see, it's like he learns Zohar like we learn Nigle, the way we learn the Talmud. He says this hakela. These people do it like this, and these people do it like that. Okay. So what are these igulim v'yoshel? He says so. When it comes to Chassidus goes in a certain direction, understanding igulim v'yoshel. Again, for the Arizal, this is an essential aspect of learning Kabbalah. That you have 2 different ways of ordering the sefirot, either as a line, one above the other, or along 3 lines. And when it's a line, it doesn't sound so much like a circle. But then I read the passage where he says that really when it's a line, what they mean to say is that these are concentric spheres, one inside the other. So in a certain sense, when you're looking at it, you see them one above the other. So if you take a cross section, so especially if you look at it from a 2-dimensional point of view, right? Instead of like a sphere is 3-dimensional. But if you look at it as a 2-dimensional point of view, then it looks like a line. Let me just show you the picture that he drew in case we didn't understand what he meant. So he says it looks, what is this picture? In the Pri Etz Chaim that we have, there is a picture. I guess here he never drew the picture, which is very interesting. No, there's no picture, in any case. So the idea is that they're one inside the other. If you do it in 2 dimensionals, it's very clear. So one circle inside the other, and then you have a line going through them. And what is that line, and so on. So this we'll see soon. But then those are the circles. So the circles are when you put one above the other, and the line is, in the end, it becomes these 3 axes. Okay, just to simplify it. There's a transition between them and all kinds of things. Then it becomes a whole geschäft, this whole thing. So how do we understand in Chassidus? So he says like this: Now, there's many things to take out of igulim v'yoshel, because again, this is such a basic part of understanding anything. Because the Kabbalah is understanding the world, also understanding the soul, understanding the nature, understanding everything. So it's almost like, when you say you want a grand unified theory of physics, how many do you want? Like in the famous joke with the Rebbe and Hashem when Hashem wanted to create the world. It says that when Hashem wanted to create the world, so he consulted the souls of the tzaddikim. So he consulted each soul, the soul of the Moshe Rabbeinu and the soul of Rashbi and the soul. When he came to the Rebbe, so he said, "What do you think? Should I create the world?" The Rebbe said, "Bracha v'atzlacha." He gave him $2, and he said, "Kiflaim letushia." So Hashem created two worlds, this world and the next world. So the same thing goes when you say, "I want to understand this world." You can't understand this world in one way. There's not one way to do it. So which way do you want to understand? You always have to ask that question. So a scientist comes up with a theory of everything. Okay, which one is it? Is it the one that is the igulim, this would be closer to nature, or is it the one that's straight lines, which would be closer to the human picture of reality, which is different? By the way, there's this guy, his name is, I don't know if you're allowed to even say his name, but I guess you have to. Ian McGilchrist, who's like a very, very famous now philosopher. He's been famous for the last 20 years, but Jordan Peterson brought him up to tremendous fame. But he was very well known before. And he's been arguing this for a long time. He's been saying there's the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere of the brain, they see the world completely differently. And he says the problem of the Western world is that it's all left brain, that it completely forgot about the way of looking at the world with the right brain. But then, you can say that, I can say that in 2 seconds, this whole, okay, I just said the whole claim. But he has 2 big volumes now. The original volume was in 2012, it was called The Brain and Its Emissary, The Master and Its Emissary, he called it. And now he's called it something else, I don't remember, it just came out. 2 big volumes that take all the new science about neurology and psychology and medicine and philosophy, everything you want, and he puts it into one big melting pot to prove his thesis. And to explain to us what he means, that you can't have... So this is really what Igulim ve'Yosher are. He's touching upon that. And he's saying that Igulim, now if I wouldn't explain it the way that the Rebbe is now going to explain it, the Tzemach Tzedek, the way he's going to explain it, the way it's explained in Chassidus, explained in many ways. He's going to explain it in a particular way. If I wouldn't only be limited to him, I would say like this, that the Igulim are nature. That's what we would call the natural flow of things. How things, and that's why, Right, exactly. The Mitzrayim represents nature. And that's why it's called the Gilaya Feifia. What is a Gilaya? Gilaya is a calf. But unlike calf in English, calf in Hebrew also means a circle. And it's Yefeifia, it's beautiful. Nature is beautiful. And there's an attitude towards life that I want everything to be natural. Then there's the other attitude, which is I want everything to be straight. I want everything to be straight edged. Sages say, En meruba mishesh temeh bereshit. There's no squares. There's no perfect squares in nature. Nature abhors 90-degree... no, symmetry it likes. It doesn't like 90-degree zaviot, angles. You can't stand it. You can't find it. The Rebbe has a letter about this. Is there anywhere in nature? Is there in salt crystals? Is there 90 degrees anywhere? There isn't 90 degrees. There's 60 degrees. There's other things, but you can't find 90 degrees. That doesn't exist in nature. And that's the essence of the straight edges, the yosher. And that's the human attitude towards life. It's a different point of view. So it really starts from this. In any case, so that's if I had to say it like without getting into what the Rebbe is now going to say. But now he says like this, that when the soul encloses itself in the body, שמתחלקים כוחותיה לחלקים פרטיים באיברי הגוף, לפי מזג תכונת כלי הגוף, כמו שכתוב בזוהר. When the soul comes into the body, the soul is one. I'm going to say this in a few lines, but I'm saying it before, to understand what the problem is. The soul is one thing, and now when it's suddenly in the body, it animates the body, it becomes many forces. There's the power of sight, and the power of hearing, and the power of action in the hands, and feeling in the fingers, and so on, and then smell, and taste. So you would think, And this is when you read the Rambam, that's what you think in the beginning. You begin to read the 8 chapters, there's his introduction to Pirkei Avos, a famous introduction. So he says there's this power in the soul, and this power in the soul, and this power in the soul. And then you begin to ask, how many souls do we have? So he says, no. In the end, these are all one. But he doesn't explain how. This was always a big question. This is the same question as asking, if Hashem is one, how come I don't think like you do? How did Hashem suddenly divide himself into Yaakov, into Gabi, and into me? How did he do that? It's not like, in the back of my mind, I know exactly what Gabi's saying. We're really one. I don't. There's complete disconnect. In the body, it seems the same way. The taste is completely disconnected from sight. There's no connection at all. So how can you say this comes from one thing? So it's the same question.
Disconnected from sight?
Yeah.
That's not true.
It's not true.
If you take a room and you put it in blue light, and then you put all different types of foods in
It affects it, but you can't say that it's connected. If a person's blind, so if he's blind, right?
He doesn't have a sense of taste again.
He doesn't have it. Okay. What you're saying is that there's an effect, but it's not that because of this I taste differently.
No, but they are very much connected.
Okay. They're connected. Okay, you just proved the point. They're connected because in the end they came from one place. And that's what we say, Kol Yisrael Arevim ze leze. Even though we're separate, on the other hand, we all affect one another. So if I do something wrong, you all suffer for it. And you do something wrong, we all suffer for it, and so on. So obviously there's a connection. But to come and say it's all one, it's very difficult. Because once the soul is enclosed inside the body, it seems, when we perceive the separation of these faculties, each one becomes something separate. And it starts from the brain itself. The mind itself is already divided. It says in the Zohar, in the Idra Rabbah and Idra Zuta, they both discuss this, the most important parts of the Zohar, that the skull is divided into 3 chambers. And these 3 chambers, physically, the physiology determines how the spiritual outcome is going to be. That's basically what he's saying. So obviously he means something, spiritual physiology, but it also comes down into our physiology, same thing. 2 in the front, meaning these would be the 2 hemispheres, and 1 in the back. And in these 3 chambers, and in these 3 chambers we find the 3 intellectual faculties, Chochmah, Bina, and Das. Wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. So in the front we have wisdom and understanding. And the chamber that is behind the shoulders, meaning that's the idea. What's in this week's Parsha? I don't think it's today. It was yesterday. We read it yesterday. What special garment did the high priest wear? You have to get ready. So. No, the special garment that's between the front and the back. And where is it? So it's on the shoulders. The ephod has 2 stones, and on them are inscribed the names of the 12 tribes. And the beautiful thing about it is that when it's inscribed in the order that's given there's 25 letters on one, 25 letters on the other. Exactly. It's like it's a mathematical question. How do you divide all the letters, all the names of the tribes, so that you get 25 and 25. It's the only way you can do it, is the way the Torah says. And these are in between the front and the back. What's the difference between the front and the back? The front is Yosher, and the Igulim we'll see is the back. The circles are the back.
Now I know why the dollar has it